Sheena Ringo, we are beginning our track by track listen through to her second album, Show So Strip, which apparently officially is translated as Winning Strip. Look, I really enjoyed the first album. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that album even more than I expected. I expected to enjoy it, but I can't deny that as someone who's obviously followed Japanese music for so many years, despite having missed Sheena Ringo for the large part of it, you always approach these things with a slight sense of when something has been hyped for so long. You know, that first album came out in 1999 and there's so many people who love it and there's a degree of nostalgia, and you kind of go into these things thinking, is there a possibility that just the hype is a little bit more than the reality? I have to be honest, although I wasn't in any way rose tinted about it, I could see the songs that I thought were just great, but not like outstanding, and there was at least one song on there that I wasn't really mad about at all. As a general, I absolutely loved that first album, Missile Moratorium. It's an album I would definitely come back round to, and an album that really ticked all the boxes of what I personally love in music, what I really enjoy in music. It hit so many of those quintessential things that to me make a classic album. So it's great. I don't lie on this channel and I can say fully straight-faced, yeah, Missile Moratorium, incredible. But one thing that kept on coming up in conversation is so many of you were saying, really glad you're liking Missile Moratorium, but my favourite album is... And people would even say the second or the third one. Well, of course, we're about to start the second album. But it seems this first trilogy of albums is beloved. So I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued to see what we get on this one. Now, straight away from the get-go, before we get into it, I'm going to give you my initial assumptions, not because I like to read a book by the cover, but simply because this is a really interesting point. Because, by the end of this experience, hopefully I'll have a very good knowledge of all of Sheena Ringo's music in months to come when we've finished every single track or whatever. But at this point, I'm going into this as someone who doesn't know what to expect. And the first thing that really strikes me is that this album cover, it's much more artistic. It's like got the flowers. It looks much more spaced out, like it's in a dream space almost. Whereas, of course, the first album had a very down-to-earth, looks like it's on a news broadcast kind of look to the album cover. People clambering all over each other, sort of the detritus of human gatherings and people arguing over things and fighting for the right photograph. It was that kind of slightly cynical vibe came through on the cover, whereas this one doesn't have a cynical vibe at all. It looks very peaceful. However, obviously, this is only, was this 1 or 2 years later? I do know, I'm not going to get hugely into this because I think that the background of artists' lives is often something that we don't really know the genuine details of in as much detail as we might think. But I have been told subsequently, but between these two albums, she did have some time in hospital. So, this is a woman who definitely wasn't suddenly just having the high life and everything going easy for her. But I'm interested how her tone, how everything changes, or just progresses. But I'm just interested to see what evolution we get from this. The first album was a bit of a struggle to get made, as first albums always are. So it's interesting to see, after the success of that first album, although obviously she wasn't immediately like the biggest star ever, but after that obviously was successful enough to turn around a second album quickly. I'm interested to see what we get from that. I'm interested to see how things evolve. Anyway, the first song is called Kyogen Sho, which is I Am a Liar. So, okay, maybe I should have thought to check that beforehand. Maybe we're not starting all Sunshine and Roses. I do get the feeling that this album cover probably there is a little bit of a sarcasm to the dream sequence like visual. But I also must say, is that actually Sheena Ringo? Because she looks, obviously this is very stylized, but she looks so different. It doesn't look anything like her, this image. So I find that very interesting. But anyway, let's go. This is a 5.5 minute opening track. One more thing I'll add before I get into this. As you guys know, I am a big fan not only of reviewing songs on their own individual merit, but especially when I do track by track reviews, I like to review songs as per how they sit in the album playlist as well. And this is the opening track. So this is the way she puts her first foot forwards, starting her second album. So I'm really intrigued to see what this 5.5 minute jaunt is going to give us. But let's jump in. I Am a Liar, says Sheena Ringo. Already you can feel a bit more budget in the recording, in the production. Everything feels a bit bigger. back with that kind of funky groove that she seems to be big into. Interesting part. I don't understand, the guitar has this weirdly distorted bass sound. Very strange. And you can just get lost in this song and listen to this growl. It's kind of got that very kind of warm funky. Where we get the bridge. I get the feeling this is going to go in a strange direction. Okay, clearly chaotic is the vibe they're going for. 'That chorus is so beautifully written. The way her voice is rising, the strings are coming down, and then back up. That extremely wide panning on the drums, everything just sounds big, thick and around the rib. Whilst also being a bit heavy on the compression. It's a weird sound. That signature note hang that Shimura does. Oh, I just love the contrast between the dirty guitar and the sort of smoothness of the strings. That's how you do a fade out. That's how you do a fade out, right? It's feeding straight into the next song. I can already tell it's feeding into the next song. Well, we'll have to wait for the next reaction to that. Right, honestly, I have a few things to say about this one straight off the bat. But first thing I want to say is that, yeah, this is one of those songs where you have to kind of adjust your expectations and adjust your thinking really to give any opinion on it, because the sound is very unique. So what do I mean by unique? Well, basically what I mean is that this song does a few things in combination that individually you may or may dislike. So, for example, the song is using this very wide pan on the drums, where you're getting certain drum sounds that are entirely on the right and entirely on the left, rather than sort of balanced in a way that it just sounds like you're sitting in front of a real drum kit. At the same time, you have a guitar that's kind of got this squelchy distortion that at some points is so distortedly squelchy and weird and modulated that the notes kind of almost just disappear into noise. And then at the same time, you've got the strings, which are lovely, but then you have this heavy layer of compression on top of everything, which is making all of the sounds come across a little bit unnatural and weird. And rather than pinpointing any of those individual things and saying, oh, this is good, this is bad, there's so much going on uniquely in the sound of this song that it's kind of best to just sit back and look and say, okay, clearly this is a compound effect. Does it work? And I would say the one thing I must say is that definitely this song feels like it has a real sense of vision. And when you're listening to it, it's beautiful how that wide pan and those weird squelchy sounds and the layering and the compression and making everything sound so big and loud just causes you to feel like you're being surrounded. Like the song really surrounds your ears. You're hearing it and it sounds big. It sounds unnatural and it sounds weird, but it sounds big. And for me, that is the song's kind of primary selling point sonically, is it does that. Now, from what I could gather of the lyrics, it's definitely a song which is about, yeah, it's got that vibe of being about dealing with struggles, and you know, it's obviously not a happy song, but it is somewhat similarly to Morphine, the final track on the last album. It feels a little bit like it's kind of taking you away a little bit, like let's get into a dream sequence, stuff is hard, let's kind of like pull you into a dream sequence while we deal with this. It's almost like zoning out to deal with the problem, and that seems to be, as I say, the vibe that I'm getting from this song, in the same way that I got that from Morphine at the end of the last album, although I would point out that sonically they are both very different. That does seem to be the effect that they're both aiming towards. For me, I would say very purposeful, very interesting. Ultimately, if I were to be 100% critical, go beyond the those things and talk about the critiquing of it, I will say that I do think there were certain parts where it was just a little bit like the squelch on the guitar. I've got to be honest, I didn't really like it. I think it got to the point of being just a little bit kind of irritating, but not so much to be a problem. Just a little bit like, I kind of wish the guitar had a little bit more not clarity, but I wish it didn't just feel so messy at points. But overall, I did like the tone of the song. I did like the tone of this otherworldly weirdness to it. And as I say, when people talk about things like compression is usually talked about in very negative light. Oh, compression ruins music. But this is a good example of how you can use compression in a very artistic way. Now, I will be interested, if the whole album is compressed like this, that might be a little bit much. But I think for this song, this was a very interesting way to grab you from the get-go and reel you in. Certainly, it did not feel like 5.5 minutes. The song felt much shorter than that, which I always say is a sign of a really good song that really kind of like hits the marks, as in it never gets boring. And I think a lot of that, again, was down to the fact that it really felt like it was taking you away and taking you into this sort of dream sequence like thing. I guess in a way, this is where the album cover might actually have a little bit of a poignant statement to make, in that maybe this album is going to have a bit of a dream sequence like vibe compared to the first one, which was much more kind of on the nose, dealing with things face to face. So I'm interested to know what this means for the rest of the album, how it sets up the rest of the album. As I say, is this setting the tone for the rest of the album, or is it just setting us off into an interesting introduction before the album opens up and takes us in different directions, which is kind of what I really suspect. But yeah, if I was hearing this album, well, I am hearing it for the first time, but if I was hearing this for the first time when it came out, directly after Mosaic Moratorium, second album, maybe only a year's past or whatever, this came on as the opening track, I would be like, yeah, you got me intrigued. Let's see where this goes. So I honestly Yeah, this has got me excited, also a little bit curious. As I say, there's some things on here where we're going in some different directions already. I mean, I'm talking about all the things that make this quite different, but I think it's worth also mentioning the things that do make this, will do continue on this song from what we heard on the previous album, which is that immediately that sort of groove based structure is very much in the middle of a song. And I love that chorus, the way it builds up and her voice goes up and down, and there's a lot of range to it. And then you've got the strings coming down at the side, and just all of these counter melodies happening in that chorus. That chorus is actually, I should have said that front and center, but that chorus is really satisfying. I really like that. But yeah, this is interesting. Do you know what? I feel like it's almost difficult to give this a review without context because this wasn't a single as far as I'm aware. I mean, looking down the music videos, well, Gips is on here. Oh, and of course we have Crime and Punishment. And then we got this one, which I don't believe I checked out yet, but I think this one's got a huge number of views. I seem to remember this always comes up when you click the popular thing on the videos tab on her channel. But anyway, look, we got a lot of songs to come. There's only 3 singles on here, so I don't think this was one of them. But yeah, this was definitely a song where context is going to be important because it's an album track, it's an album opener, and it's a very strange one. So what follows will help me come back and give a second opinion on this. So guys, remind me to come back and give you an opinion on this after I've heard more of the album. But anyway, introduction, it's certainly interesting. It's certainly interesting. And yeah, I am very excited. In fact, I'm going to record the next reaction straight away because I'm very excited to see what comes next. But that was a cool one. I'm going to reserve a lot of judgment till I've heard more. But that was a cool intro. Anyway, get in the comments. Tell me what you think. I can't wait to do the reaction to Bathroom, which comes up next. And until I hopefully see you very soon for the next one of these. For now, I'm going to say ciao, ciao. But first of all, just a quick reminder, I'm about to record the Bathroom reaction right now, but you won't see it until like 3 days later. Sorry. Ciao, ciao.